Assalamu alaikum ji. I'll not go on the stage and you can just chat from here. Building a service culture. एक हमारे बड़े ज़बरदस्त शायर हैं, मेरा ख्याल में उनको उस तरह का फेम या क्लेम नहीं मिला जो वो डिजर्व करते हैं, बट एब्सोल्युटली ब्रिलियंट. उनका नाम है अनवर मसूद, नॉट अनवर मकसूद, अनवर मसूद, right? So those of you who had an opportunity to read him, good for you. If those who have not, please read him. He writes humor, he writes satire, he's a poet, and he also writes some serious stuff. On customer services, he had a very nice ditty. It's not necessarily on customer services, but I'll try and relate it to customer services because the topic is what I'm going to talk about. Sales में सबसे मुश्किल selling industry कोई बता सकता है कौन सी है? सबसे इंश्योरेंस. एग्जैक्टली, क्योंकि आप वहाँ पे मौत बेच रहे थे, बड़ा मुश्किल काम. ठीक. तो अनवर मसूद ने एक किताब कहा कि इंश्योरेंस सेल्समैन कैसे सेलिंग करता है, एंड हाउ डज ही इंश्योर दैट द सर्विस कल्चर ही इज टॉकिंग अबाउट इज एम्बेडेड इन ए सेल्स पिच. It's actually embedded in a sales pitch. So what he talks with his customer includes the kind of services they actually provide. Of course, he does it in a humorous or satirical manner, but it captures the spirit of what we are going to talk about in the next 20 minutes fairly well. तो मैं कहा जी, आप कराएं हमसे बीमा, छोड़ें सब अंदेश. आप हमसे इंश्योरेंस करा लें, आपके जो खदशात हैं, जो परेशानियां हैं, जो फियर्स हैं, उन सबको साइड पे करें. आप कराएं हमसे बीमा, छोड़ें सब अंदेशों को, इस खिदमत में सबसे बढ़कर रोशन नाम हमारा. So imagine the kind of service culture he's talking about. We are absolutely the best and we take your fear of death away. Now that's a tough one, right? That's a real tough sell. आप कराएं हमसे बीमा, छोड़ें सब अंदेशों को, इस खिदमत में सबसे बढ़कर रोशन नाम हमारा है. खासे पैसे मिल जाएंगे आपके बीवी बच्चों को, खासे पैसे मिल जाएंगे आपके बीवी बच्चों को, आप तसल्ली से मर जाएं, बाकी काम हमारा. ठीक है? So that's service culture for you. And what I'm going to be talking about in the next 15-20 minutes is basically experiences from my life on customer services and how you can build a service culture around the organization, and hopefully all of you will be able to relate to these examples. From your daily life and the way they act. And I, just like Dr. Saab was saying, I have no examples from the Kotlers of this world and Peter Druckers of this world. I only talk about examples from my own life and how I have experienced life and see if people can relate to it. How many of you have been to Kolachi? Quite a few. Okay. And those who have been to that area would know that there are at least 20, if not more, restaurants in the same vicinity, दो दरिया पे, right? तकरीबन सारे रेस्टोरेंट एक जैसे, सब कोई लकड़ी का काम हुआ है, वही समंदर नजर आता है. कोई मुख्तलिफ समंदर कुलाची से नजर नहीं आता, वही समंदर नजर आता है जो बाकी सबको मुख्तलिफ और जो जगहों से नजर आता है. Why do you pick कुलाची? Taste? Okay. How you've not tasted anyone else? So how would you know the taste is good? In majority, people have not tasted anything but Kolachi in that place. It is the Kolachi experience. And I tell you what, those of you who had the opportunity to pay their bills or being part of the group, have you noticed when you are going out of the exit, one guy comes to you more or less harassing you and saying, "Sir, please give me feedback of how your experience was." And you say, "Yeah, it was good. अगर कोई छोटे मोटे मसले हैं, सर प्लीज क्रिटिसाइज अस, प्लीज क्रिटिसाइज अस. हाउ कैन इट बी दैट यू लाइक एवरीथिंग? प्लीज टेल अस व्हाट इज रॉन्ग विद अस, व्हाट कैन वी डू टू इंप्रूव. नाउ दिस इज एन इनक्रेडिबली डेयरिंग क्वेश्चन टू आस्क. इमेजिन एनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन गोइंग टू इट्स कस्टमर सेइंग, प्लीज मुझे क्रिटिसाइज करें, मुझ पे तनकीद करें. Imagine the confidence Kolachi has on their services. Imagine their lust or desire or passion to improve. I have traveled almost around the world in the last 30 years, never seen a restaurant, never seen a hotel. They ask for feedback. I don't know how they then take the feedback, but what I do know is their relentless desire to improve customer services is like nowhere. That's the Kolachi experience. And I'm assuming that the feedback that they get goes back into their system. They try and see what are the kind of consistent feedback they're getting from 4,000 customers every day, and they consistently work on those criticisms that are coming from the customer, and based on that they are taking their services up. Kolachi has now become synonymous to the visit of Karachi as a city. Anyone who comes to Karachi wants to visit Kolachi, has Kolachi in their list of things to do. That's customer experience. That's building a service culture. And it is always a top-down. It always needs to happen from the top. And as I give you a couple of other examples and then I try and wrap up, you will understand what I'm saying. The company that I work for now, previously I worked for organizations like Nokia, Comptel, NCR Corporation, Nokia Siemens at very senior executive positions. But the company I'm engaged with now, it was my third or fourth month into the company, and I got a system escalation for me, and it said we have 428 open customer calls. 428 open customer calls. That means 428 complaints have not been attended to or have not been resolved in the last 24 hours or 24 hours plus. Now that alerted me, and I didn't know how the system was working before because I was relatively new in the organization. I called my customer services head and I asked him, what is this? And he was a bit embarrassed as to why this escalation has come to me, and he apologized to me and he said, sorry sir, this has come to you. Don't worry, I'll fix it. And I'll make sure that this threshold is reduced. Now the reason the escalation came to me is because system had a threshold that any time the number of open calls exceed 425, system will generate an email to the CEO and he will then take action so that he's aware of it. And when the customer services head came to me, he thought I'm either upset or I just want an explanation as to why the number exceeded 425. But that was not my problem. I had an issue with this 425 as a number. And I asked him, yeah, I'm sure you will fix it, but how did you arrive at this 425? How did you know that this is a magical number? That 425 से ऊपर होगी तो CEO के पास जानी चाहिए. ये number 10 क्यों नहीं? ये number 1000 क्यों नहीं? How did you come to this number? And he came up with a logic to 50,000 elements, a number of calls, and and we thought 425 was a good number. So I said, there is no logic to it. There is no scientific calculation behind it. There is no real backing of data. It is based on it. He said, yes. So I said, from today, I'm setting this escalation point at 100. Now. And he didn't like it. He was extremely upset. He said, not possible. I said, I don't care. Just like you did not have a scientific calculation to 425, I don't have one either, but I know it can be done. So you go back, make sure system is fixed accordingly. Anything above 100 has to be escalated to me with immediate effect. He said, you will get 200 emails a day. I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'll make sure I read all of them. I'll make sure I go back to the engineer because of whom this number is high, and I'll make sure that he takes appropriate action. The threshold was fixed at 100. The reason it was fixed at 100 is because the top-down was not willing to accept the threshold which is set. So अगर आपने mediocrity accept कर ली है, तो आपको mediocrity मिलेगी. That's how it works. And service is a very subjective thing. It's very difficult to define services, and somehow the trick for organization is to make them measurable. Is to define services in a way that people are able to measure. People are able to be judged based on their performance. So the moment I said 100, of course I didn't like it, but I knew it will happen. First few days, I of course had a flurry of emails in my inboxes, and they were all being responded, they were all being attended to, and the pressure was building up. This is now 1.5 years that we did this. Can anyone guess what is the number of open calls today in the organization? 14. That's how service culture is built. That's how organized. And imagine the back-end work that has gone into it. Every engineer was getting an email from me who had his name in the list. They realized that the management vision has changed. They realized that concept of customer services, the response time, the resolution time, the repeat calls, all these are now being tracked. And the moment they started realizing it, they started to exert themselves, going beyond the extra, going beyond their means or going beyond their comfort zone, if you like, and things started to happen. Management का सबसे मुश्किल challenge क्या है? किसी भी manager का, मेरे नज़दीक, and everyone will have his own definition. I personally think the biggest challenge a leader faces, the biggest challenge, is how to maximize the potential of his people. And that's where people fail. And I stretched it to 100. I did not mean, or I did not want it to go to 14. But the moment organization realized that 435 is not a good number, they went to the last mile, and the whole culture changed. Another example. Last year, about a year ago, we came up with this philosophy in the organization, and as I said, remember, service is a top-down thing. It needs to happen bottom-up, but it needs to be driven top-down. So we came up with this corporate philosophy, and this is how we are taking the organization forward. There are various elements to it, but service is one of them. And the corporate philosophy is very simple. It's about a bit early. So that's what it is called. A bit early. So if I have made a commitment to a customer that I will deliver you an equipment in 30 days, can I do it in 29 days? Not 30. 30 is red for us, although it's as per commitment. If I have given a commitment to the customer that I will deliver him or I'll give him a response time to a call in 2 hours, can I do it in 1 hour and 59 minutes? If it is 1 hour and 59 minutes, it's yellow. If it's 2 hours, which is as per my commitment, it's a red. So, beating commitment. So the message we are giving with this strategy is that meeting commitment, meeting what I have said that you will do, is not acceptable to the company. We have to always go beyond. And little beyond. Enough that you stretch a bit. 2 घंटे अगर आप कर सकते तो 1 घंटा 59 minutes भी कर सकते. It's just about bringing out those efficiencies into your system so that you cut some of the redundancies which typically exist in any processes once you go into the process re-engineering. And it's also about building a culture of exceeding customer expectation. Why do you exceed customer expectation? I'm sure all of you belong to various organizations. आपके पास repeat customer आता ही जब आप उसकी expectation meet ना करें. Meet करके customer, so typically, again, slightly digressing from the topic, if on a scale of 1 to 10, you are measuring a customer, and if the customer says 7 as an example, that you are 7, then research says that means he's a satisfied customer. And research also says satisfied customers shop around. The moment he gives you 8, that's a delighted customer. Research says delighted customer have the stick in it. So the Kulaji experience I talk about, is an experience of a delighted customer. And we want to go beyond that, beyond the normal commitment. So the whole philosophy is revolving around how we can beat our customer expectation, and in the bargain, so it doesn't just end with the customer. आप कस्टमर को खुश रख ही नहीं सकते अगर आप अपने एम्प्लॉइज को खुश नहीं रख सकते. It's a very simple gateway to customer delight. A lot of time, a lot of organizations, a lot of CEOs focus a lot on customer delight, but they forget there is another element which is called employee delight, and they also forget that employee delight is actually the gateway towards customer delight. If you don't have delighted employees, engaged employees, committed employees, dedicated employees, passionate employees, you are not getting customer delight. Forget it. Won't happen. So you need to focus on the employee. And we also need to make sure that we focus on internal processes. So a bit earlier could also mean, as an example, if my finance guy takes 4 days to raise an invoice, Can they do it in 3 days? If my supply chain takes 1 day to get the delivery challan to finance so that they can raise an invoice, can they do it in half a day? Small improvements in the way we do things. And the magic happens. Let me share some numbers with you. And again, this is almost last 11 months now. We launched it, not 11, like 13 months. We launched it in September last year. When we launched this a bit earlier philosophy, our customer response time, which is as per our commitment, is 2 hours. We were hitting it 45% of the time. So 45% of our calls, we were reaching the customer side on time. 55% we were not on time. 45%. Last 3-month average, 87%. And it's the same people by it. So we have not changed too many people. Few people, but 90% of the people are exactly the same. But the whole culture has changed. Our deliveries, as an example, when we benchmarked at the time of launching this a bit earlier corporate philosophy, our deliveries to customer was 22% either on time or earlier, both. तो मैं दोनों को मिला लूं कि मैं on time deliver कर रहा हूं या पहले deliver कर रहा हूं, तो 22% है. Last 3-month average, a bit earlier. On time is not part of our KPI anymore. Last 3-month average, 69%. The whole organization culture has changed. How did it happen? First, as I said, it's a top-down thing, and I'm more or less summarizing the discussion. First is the top-down thing. The organization has to commit to a service excellence culture. But just saying it is not going to happen. You need to make sure that they become part of your systems and processes. Second, make them part of your strategy. Make them part of your strategic direction if you want to thrive on customer services, on building a services culture. Third, have your performance management system around this. So in our organization now, every employee, we have over 340 employees in the organization, every employee is judged based on what he can do a bit earlier. So if he's a logistics guy, he's judged on what improvement he's bringing in, and they're quantified in his work objectives. If he's a finance guy, how fast he can do the invoice. If he's an engineer, how fast or how much beyond our commitment he's going in terms of how many calls he attended last year, which were in 1 hour and 59 minutes and not 2 hours. It's part of their performance management. So that's the third thing. Make it part of your integrated performance management. Kolachi, as I gave the experience, it's a repeatable thing. They do this every day because they've made it part of their system. They check it with every customer. Fourth is communication. A lot of time organizations forget about the importance of communicating with the employees. If people ask me how do you differentiate or what is better of the two, over communication and under communication, I always believe over communication is still far better than under communication, because under communication doesn't bring people on the same page. So make sure you communicate your strategy, not just your strategy, but why it is important. Once we understand कि ये क्यों किया जा रहा है, हमारी जो मोटिवेशन है वो फर्क हो जाता है. जब आप किसी को बताएं नहीं और कहने बस ये कर लो क्योंकि मैं कह रहा हूं, टिपिकली जैसे हमारे घरों में होता है, जैसे डॉक्टर साहब से मादरत के साथ एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट में होता है, क्योंकि मैं कह रहा हूं कर लो. Let him understand, let him open his mental faculty to see why it is important to do it. And once he understands, he tries and absorb it as part of his life and try and make it a lifestyle. Right? So fourth is communication. And last is make people heroes for their service culture. So we have a Value Champion Award in our organization, which is the highest award that we give to an employee every quarter based on our quarterly performance. And this biggest award goes to the guy who has absorbed this a bit earlier philosophy in the best possible way and whose KPIs are the best. Make people your heroes. People who are living your values, people who are living your strategy. So these 5 things, if organizations who do this right, they are able to make service excellence their lifestyle. Thank you very much.